super sporadic. So
Sporadic in that the conversation will be sporadic, or sporadic that we're doing it? We're holding each other accountable, dude.
we're trying. It's gonna be interesting. Like a yes to everything you just said. I don't know, man.
All right.
Like I said, it's so much easier to just call you on the road and be like, "Hey, man, let's talk about some shit." And then it's like, "All right, let's sit down and record it." Like, I don't know. It's a lot of pressure. Can we just like, you know what? This isn't gonna work. Just call me tomorrow when I'm on the road.
All right. So, to all the people at home, how Nagy and I became friends is what? It was the summer of 2016. Does that sound right?
Yeah, because we started in 2015 as youth staff.
Okay.
Did two contracts. We were youth. I was youth staff when we met. Well, I was not
Yep.
sport.
You were youth staff on the Oasis, and I was a sports staff on there.
Yeah, which is just crazy because I'm like the. Well, I'm trying to think. Like one of my first memories is the beep test. Like doing the beep test with you, but that was training for iFly, and that was why I already had to be
And
sports staff.
and that's after we knew each other for a while, because I knew you used to work out with me beforehand. Remember? Because we would go run on the track, and then I'd be like, Nagy, let's go lift. And you're like, nah, dude, I'm going to go to the bar.
Yeah, like you're like, oh, we need to work out together. Like, well, that doesn't sound right at all. So,
Bro,
because it's
oh, I wish I could get Guinness Book of World Records, because I bet you I have the record for the most miles run on a cruise ship. There's nobody.
absolutely.
There's
I would
nobody that can
hands
touch me.
down. No, like it comes down to like yeah, it was being on ships and that motivation of yo fish, we're going to the bar. Like, well, I need to go work out first. Like, cool, I'm gonna go put 3 down, and then you'll be there. And that's what it was. And a handful of workouts. I literally do not have memories of this. Like I said, like the pictures are my workout came from chasing you around as King Julian and doing laps up and down from cabins to the bar. Like those are my workouts. Like 6 flights of stairs at a time. Well, like 3. I mean, because it was what were the pubs? They were deck.
Pubs were like
3
deck
was
5.
Venetian.
They were, or no, they were deck 4.
And then
No, 5.
and
They
then
were
the
5 because
smokers
Boardwalk was
6.
on 6. And it wasn't
No,
2
you're
stories
the
up.
wrong end of the ship. Yeah. So you'd go up
Oh, you're thinking
to
the
deck
crew pub.
3.
I'm thinking of the guest pub.
Yeah. No. So you walk through the mess and you go up to deck. Where did we dress you? When we dressed you as King Julian, that
It was the
deck
same place we got ready
2?
for 70s. It was just above, so if it was the like Tiffany's shop or whatever, it was
No,
that little
different
roundabout
things.
right above there. We didn't get dressed out there. We got dressed in the doorway back here. And then we just popped right out. You got dressed down in the crew bar, down in like the party
The
room.
Venetian. Yeah, the
Yeah,
Venetian. And that was like the back end. That was deck like 2.
yeah,
And then the crew pub, that's deck 4.
I don't know. But either way. So,
Man, that's bonkers.
all right.
I can't like we spent
Let's tie
a
this.
year and
Let's
a
tie
half,
this
2
all
years
back
ago.
up. So, Nagy and I became friends almost instantaneously, but I think we really had a true bonding moment when you were my handler as King Julian. So,
True.
in the parade,
Sorry, I need to take a TV timeout. TV timeout.
what?
Everything that I just talked about was a side tangent and not a good intro to any kind of. So like
But that
that's
was
a good
beautiful.
one. Like we can dive in. Like that's a good intro. That's a good intro for
No,
us.
that was beautiful.
But we got a TV timeout and we got to start way over. So
Okay.
you can do an intro, do a welcome, and I'm not gonna go on a drunken tangent like that of like which bar was that? Nah. So that's I just needed to grease the wheels. Needed to grease the wheels. We got to cut it there. I wanted to cut you there before we actually got anything real. We're
Dude.
gonna start over there and
Dude.
go for it.
No, we're picking up from
Again.
right where we are. So,
No,
Nagy and I
absolutely
best
not. No.
Nagy and I
No.
best bonded when he was my handler during King Julian, which I don't remember how or when you took over, but I was on the ship first, and one of the girls that was the sports staff with me, which for all of you at home, I'm not a big guy. And even back then, I was not big. I was 5'7" and probably 125, 130 pounds. I was not a big dude. Yeah. So there was a girl that played King Julian, and she couldn't play King Julian in the parade because there were so many characters. She had to be one of the penguins. So they needed somebody else to be King Julian. So long story short, I took over that role. After a few months, and every one of us gets a handler. So in case anything goes south, we had a signal that we do, and then they grab us, which would be my Nagy, grabs me and takes me through a door immediately, right? It could be 1,000 different reasons I do this for.
So the handlers, I'm going to jump in. The handlers, so this is where I started. I was a handler for Gloria. So anyone that's never been on a ship, what happens is there's people that dress up in costumes. Fish was King Julian. So, yeah, he likes to move it. He was King Julian. He'd run around being crazy. So every week we'd throw a parade, and all the Madagascar characters would run around the main mall strip of the ship and do dances, choreography, whatever. I started out wrangling Gloria, who's the hippo, and her point of vision is about 5 inches by 2 inches. She can't see anything. And you literally have this big fan sail that you are literally waving to be like, hey, the path is over here. Because walking and looking at layered brick and things on the ship, you don't know your path. So you are a wrangler because you are guiding them like, hey, follow the giant flashing fan. And then I remember there were complaints from some of the youth staff that you, Fish, were too active. Like King Julian runs too much, which is totally in character of King Julian, but these little South American girls at 5'0" are like, yo, I don't like keeping up with King Julian.
And
so
to
I
be
went
fair
from
with that,
Gloria's Wrangler.
To build off of your vision, I played multiple characters, which we'll talk about later. But King Julian in particular, you could see like this big. You could see everything. There was no claustrophobia. You had two bulbous
eyes with like mesh. You had full field of vision.
That coupled with my suit was skin tight. So like I could jump around and do whatever, whereas some of these characters have to hold a shape. So they can't move as much.
We'll
talk
huge.
About that.
Like,
yeah.
The movement for the legs was like 1 foot. So imagine walking where your shins have
for sure.
a circular foot of movement.
But
so
I was too active
walk, so they just move slow.
I was too active for the youth staff. And so
correct. So
yes.
I was like, all right, I've met Fish outside externally a couple times. Yeah, I'll like, oh, Nagy, you're a hyperactive guy. Follow this crazy guy around, and we would help you suit up and then like run around. And it became like, oh, now I'm not guiding you anymore. Now I'm just trying to keep up with you. And at the end of it being like, all right, you just made me run a half a mile. You're buying me a beer tonight.
And then we used to choreograph dances. So in particular, the role of King Julian, what would happen is this giant bridge would roll out. And there'd be 1 or 2 characters that go up. There's no other characters that actually go up there. It's just different dancers and whatnot. And I was the only character that came out onto the bridge. So I would come out in
Julian
front.
dances solo. Everyone knows this. Yeah.
I would come out in front, and Nagy would be, probably about 5 feet behind me? Somewhere along that bridge.
Again, to like guide you to the bridge, but you're like, yeah, I got it. And then I just have to stand there while King Julian dances and all the kids are like,
which to be fair.
And I'm like there in like African garb and headsets. Like, I'm with that guy.
Which to be fair, anybody could be mildly like horrified of falling off of this bridge because it was probably 2 feet wide, maybe 2.5 feet wide. Straight
it's
long,
like 3 feet, like,
and
unrolled,
the guardrails
then,
came
like,
up to like your
like,
knees.
It's the perfect height to be like, hey, if you fall, this is gonna make sure you trip and hit head first.
Yeah, and the other thing is like you're falling a full story on this like tile. You're falling.
Oh yeah, concrete tile, middle of the boardwalk, like hardcore middle of the cruise ship.
So you could tell why a lot of people didn't
walk on a cruise ship, and it's a mall. And like if you've walked into any mall, that kind of tile, storefronts, everything, picture that, and now we're dancing 16 feet in the air with the perfect height of tripping railing, being like, yo, we're about to be on a Darwin Award if you misstep in your giant 1.5 size costume. Like,
and so you can see now
stuffing.
where nobody wanted that job. Nobody, like,
right.
In the grand scheme of things.
No one wants to be in the costume, and no one wants to be chasing the other person. And you and I are like, we're down for all those things.
Sign us up. And so that's when we really bonded, because before that we would set up different dances that we would do up there together. And basically, I don't know, we did tons of different things together. Right?
You guys had more of the choreography, the flashers, like the sign holders, which is what we were. Mm-hmm. We had some, but it was more of like, they don't want to see us doing a lot of stuff because it's about the characters. It's about King Julian. It's about Alex. It's about all the characters of Madagascar, the penguins doing stuff. You don't want to look at the choreography of the Wranglers. You're looking at the characters.
Yeah, for sure. Huh. I never thought about it like that, because I've only been characters. Yeah, so I was King Julian.
Right, so we were backstage.
Bro, I was King Julian, Kung Fu Panda, and Shrek. And let me tell you, from the story that you were telling me...
You were those? I didn't know that.
Oh my God, dude. Shrek, and they were all on different ships.
I begged to be Shrek, and they're like, you're too short. And I was like...
Oh, that's what happened to me. So I was Shrek once. The guy who was supposed to be Shrek got sick that day before. And they were like, Fish, you're not just do it. And I was like, all right, fine. And so Shrek's eyeballs were like here. So I had my Wrangler. I was like, dude, you have to keep that sign up above your head at all times.
Again, this is
and if I moved wrong in Shrek, all I would see is stage lights just flashing in, and you're blind. There's nothing. And you're like, I hope nothing's in front of me. And Jesus is taking the wheel at this point.
Like, yeah. Well, that's the point of the Wranglers, to be like, yo, Shrek, you're about to run into kids in prams and carriages, like, over here, like, yeah.
But yeah, so you had to be specific heights to be specific characters.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Nagy and I will come back to our parade stories another time. But
many a time of just, like, getting ready for it.
That is when we first met, and I was a sports staff and you were a youth staff. And in particular,
Correct.
What we did was, for me being a sports staff, I was on the Oasis. We met on the Oasis of the ship for reference, or Oasis of the Seas for reference for everybody.
Oasis of the ship, yeah.
So I worked on the flowrider, the rockwall, the zip line. We did doors together. That was a mutual job that we shared. We did gangway together. That was a mutual job that we shared. I don't know if we ever did spots together. I did spots, but I don't think I ever did it with you.
Spots was always such a solo thing. So spots is where you are doing spotlights for the Broadway shows, for the ice shows, things like that. But a lot of those duties are, you go in, Nagy, you're assigned to spot 3, and you walk in and you go to spotlight number 3, you sit down and follow the instructions of the guy being like, hey, spot 3, follow the skater in black, and you just follow with the thing, you do the thing. Same thing with but so that's, we might have done them together, but you're not together. It's not like, all right, Fish and I are on it, like, yeah.
Run this back, because you made that job sound so easy. First of all, these are Broadway caliber shows, and you have tempos and rhythm and people talking in your head the whole time. They're like, all right, you're going to hear a cadence in this song. You're going to slow open to this on that person in 3, 2, 1, open, 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 hold, break. Like, dude, don't make it sound like it's just, all right, turn on the light, turn it off. It is way more complicated than that.
It was very complicated, but it was like a good production manager knew how to walk you through it. He literally was like, all right, I'm going to pretend like you've never done this before. You're like, cool, because even if I did it before, I'm not going to remember. And he'd be like, all right, blue shade. And he'd be like, he would even before the show be like, all right, reach up with your right hand. You got blue, green, red shade. You got your iris, like full open, full close. And he would be like, all right, give me 50% open iris, blue shade. So you're like, okay, click, 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 blue shade. Now follow the guy in black. If he was a jerk, he'd be like, follow Marcus. And you're like, I don't know who Marcus is. And
Oh no, if he was a
like,
real jerk, he would call them by their people names. If they called them by their character names, you're like, okay, I get that.
yeah, that's even better. Yeah, like follow, you know, I can't even think of Mamma Mia's main names, but like follow Mamma Mia. You're like, all right, but yeah, I'll follow Tiffany. You're like, I don't know who that is, dude. Like, I've only been on this ship 2 weeks, and I don't know the cast character's name. I don't know these real people. So it'd be like, follow the girl in polka dots, and you're like, easy, and you follow. But the other thing is, I would even get on the mic beforehand and be like, yo, Nagy from sports here, Nagy from youth staff here. Whoever does worse, you call out, and then they're buying a drink tonight. And that would get the production manager on board being like, all right, you guys are cool, let's do this. And like you're following, especially the ice cast, when you're following skaters and they're doing crazy tricks and you just like miss and get the spotlight like off them. And like in your mic, you just hear like, hey bro, you missed that pretty bad. And you're like, yeah, I know. That's when you knew you had a cool one of like whatever. Or the good ones would be like, yo, he's gonna jump up in the air, and you're like, okay, I can spot that. Like, all right, thanks for the heads up. So those were spots.
Yeah, but there were also people that were so not good at it. Like there were people that didn't have a beat, didn't have a tempo, and could not do it, and would never touch it. Yeah, in the other part,
even the PM would be like, don't come back. Like he would talk to the managers being like, hey, don't send Nagy back. He sucks at spots. And you're like, yeah, fair enough. Like, why can't I do the aquatic show? Like, no reason. You get to do it at like doors instead.
Which, oh, by the way, for the aquatic show, and you're doing spotlights, and you're trying to track people off of 17-meter high dives into a fucking, like, aqua tank that's this big.
Backyard
and
pool.
You've got to keep up with them the whole way down. So don't make this sound like this is easy stuff of...
Again, that one, like, okay, somebody's jumping off 17 meters, which is about 50 feet, and you're tracking them from the top and then jumping into the above-ground size pools that you see in Midwestern backyards. That's the size of the pool. So you're tracking there. I was wondering why I never only did 2 shows. That might explain a lot more. But on the other hand, they did hire a lot more black shirts. Black shirts. So everyone on ships is defined by like the color things they wear. We were sports staff. We had our uniforms. There's the blue boys. Those are all the maintenance people you see around the ship, painting and chiseling and hammering on everything. Percussive maintenance, just hit it until it works. Black shirts, that's all the stage staff. Those are all the people working behind the scenes, making all the shows run, making all the pyrotechnics, all the lights, all the stage movement, everything you can that has the important things of the show. Without them, it doesn't run. If we mess up spots, no one's going to notice. If they mess up putting something on stage, might notice a little bit. U staff used to be yellow. I miss the U staff yellow. And then
they just
waiters and stuff like that always have their shirts. So
they always had their fancy shirts. Sports staff, we wore just kind of whatever uniform we were wearing for that particular item. Right? Like if you're on the flowrider, you're wearing your flowrider uniform. If you're working doors,
it's just like the gray shirts.
Yeah, so let's go back.
Doors
let's ring this back to where we started with what jobs we worked together. Those were what I worked on there.
Again, we could go on tangents.
So I did I also did the flow show. We did a couple parades together. And I did 70s, which I think you did sometimes. You kind of did it whenever you were drunk and wanted to.
It was a rotation. like you would usually be put on 70s and it'd be a particular staff, but with the youth staff part of it, it was they'd send 80% youth staff every week. And then the 20% was like rotational of, someone's just got to go. But when you got put on 70s weekly every cruise, then you were the 70s cast.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is so we had different roles initially. I think at one point we were on the same thing. So I was part of the village people. So I was one of the guys that would go out and dance and then go back and then come out later in the show dressed up as the Leatherman.
Village people. Yeah.
What's up, Disney? The Leatherman, the cowboy, the cop, the sailor, whoever. And you were an extra person, and you just jumped in and took your shirt off.
So they were called disco dancers.
Is that what?
It was literally just because you're just the background. You're wearing the floofy shirt, you're wearing the afro, and you're just dancing.
Yeah.
And then when you were put on 70s, that's when when I got the actual village person role, it's like, all right, you're gonna go be a disco dancer, plus you are now the construction worker. Like, that was my role, and that's where it became a weekly thing.
Yeah, when you're one of the village people, you're one of the weekly people that's in it every week. That's to be fair.
Yeah.
And then what other jobs did you do as a youth staff when you were on the Oasis? So
when you're
are you guys working in the pool yet?
You take care of the kids.
Okay, go. You go.
So youth staff is taking care of the kids. So we never like to call it daycare because it wasn't daycare. Youth staff's divided up into 4 age groups. You've got the 6 to 2-year-olds, and that's the nursery. So that's where you have to check in, you have to pay, you're bringing the food. It's, nursery, they're babies. Then you have the 3 to 5-year-olds, that's the aquanauts. Then you had the explorers, which was the 5 to 7-year-olds. 6 to 8-year-olds. And then you had the Voyagers, that was the 9 to 11-year-olds. Anything above 11 was considered teens, and they'd be in the teen center. So I guess there's technically five groups. Because teens goes from 12, 13 to 17. If you're 18, sorry, you're an adult, can't hang out, can't do anything. So you're brought up in those groups, and you'd be assigned to those different rooms, and you run those activities. Run 3 activity groups a day from 9 to 12, 1 to 3, 6 to, or 5 to 8 kind of thing. And then you run those activities. Your external activities would be Splashaway Bay. So you're doing the pool. You just go stand at a pool to yell at adults trying to bring kids with diapers into the pools.
That was
miserable.
Like, oh,
that kid just brought a diaper into the pool. Oh, dude, there's millions of Splashaway Bay of that baby with a diaper just jumped in the pool. Now they've closed down the whole pool for the next 3 days. Sorry about it, but now we're off duty. So you got Splashaway Bay. We'll just go with water things. We'll dive into that later. The carousel. So you go run a carousel shift where you're just on there for a couple hours, just starting it. Doors, and then your youth staff activities. And then we called it switching to the dark side, where we went from youth staff to sports staff. And that's when Jared and I transferred and switched over.
So to give you guys that format and kind of how that works is we were all under the same entertainment department. So there were X amount of sports staff that did my job. There were X amount of youth staff that did Nagy's job. There were X amount of cruise staff, and these are the people that are hosting bingos and trivias and games like that. They're generally a small minority compared to the other two. Then we have the cast,
relatively,
which is across
they're
all
the big
shows.
Ones,
And then there's nothing else outside of that, right? Your crew, then you have your cruise director, and that's it.
Bar staff, so if you walked onto a ship as a patron, you're gonna get to know your bartenders because you're gonna find a bar that's in a location you like.
Yeah, but they're not part of our. They weren't part of our department, is what I'm saying.
No.
So
I'm trying to think. So I'm just thinking as a guess it goes on. You see your bartender. Like you go to the pub because you want the pub. You go to the pool bar because that's your pool bar. You're gonna know cruise staff because they're the ones hosting bingo. They're the ones hosting trivias. They're the ones running activities or like the cannonball contest. But then you're going to get to know sports staff because they're the ones doing the zip line. They're the ones doing the rock climbing. They're the ones doing the flowrider. You might get to know the youth staff if you bring children on board because you're checking them in, but a lot of it is like we were such like youth staff are the most underappreciated people on ships because you walk in and you go, "Here's my human. Take care. Thank you. I'm going to drink at the bar for the next 4 hours, and I'll pick them up later." And but you're really going to know sports staff because it's like I'm surfing a lot, I'm rock climbing a lot, I'm doing stuff a lot. Like you're spending time with these people, and crew staff because those are the faces of like, hey, it's Mike hosting trivia, and now Mike hosting the cannonball contest. Now Mike getting you off the ship. Now Mike greeting you on the ship. Like crew staff are the faces, sports staff are the activities. So if you're doing them a lot, those are the ones you're gonna get to know. Youth staff are like again just the here's my human, I'm gone.
And to also be fair, is your job as a youth staff was predominantly women. I'd say it's 70-30.
Yeah, so
And
that was the
my
crazy
job
thing too.
was probably 90-10
Predominantly
male to
male.
male to
Yeah.
female,
Yeah.
which is another very important note to why you wanted to change over as well, because you need the testosterone of the locker room. You need
Completely false. It was so nice being the so my record was on the Oasis. It was me and 26 females, and I was the only male. And the only negative I will say is that I was spending about $40 a month on chocolate because they would sync up and I would just bring chocolate in and go, "Stop yelling at me, I'll do all the work, you hang out." And that was one thing that happened, once a month for a couple days where it was just like I would come in with a hangover, be like, "Oh man, I'm kind of rough," and they would go, "Well, I'm menstruating," and I would go, "Say no more, I'm cured. You sit back and do nothing. I'm doing all the work. Like, don't yell at me, buy me a drink later." And all these girls were like, "Thank you. You understand." Because again, my girlfriend slash fiance slash wife at the time was going through all the same things. So I was like, this is a dumb contest. This is no contest. I've got it. And we would just like I loved it. Like again, I would do more work because the harder I worked, the more drinks they would buy me at the end of the day. And it was just easy. Then you switch over to sports where it's 90% male and you're like, okay, we're buying drinks for each other so we don't fight each other. I was like, I would rather go back to like
True.
any like cattiness versus physical alpha is such a different animal. Of like, all right, this is dumb drama solved with chocolates and alcohol versus I have to buy fish and drink right now because he wants to punch me in the throat. Like
Bro.
that's a different animal.
I will never forget one time me and Ricky. All right, so this guy that I worked with on the Harmony, he was an ex English Marine or something along those lines. I don't know. Either way, him and I didn't see eye to eye. We were already grinding at each other. And I called him a twat. Didn't realize how bad that was in the moment.
Where was he from?
England.
You said that. Okay, carry on.
And
Sorry,
he
this is like
smashed his forehead into mine. And he could have easily chucked me
Whoa.
off the top of the zip line. We were like right at that line. He could have thrown me off. I would have been gone. We handled it a few minutes later, solved it out later that night. But either way, I get what you mean, because it is a lot of, one thing to say is it is a very stress-filled environment if it needs to be, right? If it warrants it,
Yeah.
bro, you can have people on a fucking wire. And what I mean by that is,
Yeah, well, like, dude, you have 80-degree heat, 90-degree heat, full humidity. You're out there for hours. Tensions are hot. Someone says something even as a joke in passing, and it can just boil you over. I would like that immediately reminds me of I made a comment in front of guests one time, and a guy pulled me into the locker room and goes, "If you ever speak like that in front of guests, if you ever disrespect me like that again, I'm gonna punch you in the face." And I was like, I still don't even remember what I said, but I was just like, "Dang, okay, didn't expect that."
Yeah.
That's the alpha type masculinity you deal with, where you're like, you and I could always have the banter being like, "Fish, you're being a fucking wimp about this." Like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, screw you, you're being, like, I would even say, "Screw you, you're being mean, buy me a drink later." And you're like, "All right, sorry, that was over the line." But you get some of these people from other cultures, and it's like, uh, you just insulted me personally. I'm ready to have a family feud with you. And you're like, "Okay, that was supposed to be a joke in passing, my bad."
Bro, let's also add in, like, with the sports staff, and this was unique to them, I think, because I didn't hear this out of many of them. We had a lot of ex-military guys constantly.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I would
So
say
youth staff
probably
was all just like teachers, vacationers, childcare. Like, it was such a friendly atmosphere. And then you go to sports staff, and it's like, "Yeah, I'm ex-military, ex-cop."
I remember
I
one
was
of my
an
best.
extreme sports person, and you're like, and now you're on cruise ships trying to be mean about it. Like, what are you doing, man?
Well, not even that. Just like they knew how to buck when they wanted to. Like they just knew
Correct.
how to
Yeah.
shut it down, get in your face, whatever. And that coupled with, again, one of my favorite scenes in Romeo and Juliet is when Mercutio dies and everybody's like, "Oh, it's because it was so hot out." And I get it now. Because when you sit on that zip line for an hour and the Jamaican sun and it's nothing but that black deck kicking back at you and you are just like,
Time out.
"Ugh!"
No, I get the Jamaican heat, but where does Mercutio fit in this? Like,
Bro,
oh, you like Romeo and Juliet, like that? Like, whoa, what? You could have picked.
everybody says Mercutio died because it was hot that day and tensions were high. So that's why Mercutio and Romeo were barking at each other. And that's a big thing to the scene. And
Okay,
everybody always
that's
said
better.
that.
I thought you were comparing like ship.
Oh,
Like,
you were comparing our
Romeo and
war?
Juliet
No.
feuding houses.
No, I was making an allusion to the general idea of that. But dude, I get it
If
now. Like
anyone reads books, which
you come
you
off of
do,
that
like
and you are
that's
just
different.
at attention, ready to just
Oh yeah,
snap at a
no.
second. Now coupled with that
All you
you've
have to do
worked
is
every day for 5 months.
Yeah, no, I would say like if you ever need perspective, go stand on your roof in July and just walk laps and then let someone yell like, "Hey bitch, you thirsty?" and you will snap on them. Now multiply that by months in like that's equivalent to the Jamaican. Sorry, I was trying to just make that connection of the Shakespeare. I was like, "Yo, I respect that you're throwing Shakespeare in here, but what?" Like, okay, sorry. That's a Nagy tangent right there.
You're
A
fine.
tangent, if you will. There's gonna be a bunch.
You're fine. But so yes, that's why tensions were high. Okay. But yes, that is one thing to note is that we were predominantly men and a lot of them were either like amateur athletes, like really good athletes, ex-Marines or military or whatever, or they were like really young kids fresh out of school. That was kind of the majority of sports staff right there.
I mean, yeah, I would agree with that for the most part. Like, it's
Yeah.
because you can get hired at any stance. Like, I mean, that was the cool thing about ships is, for the most part, if you have any reference of experience, they'll bring you on. Like, I was actually shut down, so I applied for sports staff first, and I was like, "Listen, I know how to wakeboard. I'm a rock climber. I've worked on zip lines. Like, I know how to do all these things." And they go, "No, sorry." And then I went, "Okay, I work with kids." And they go, "Youth staff need people, you're hired." And then I had to transfer over. And when we got on the ship, I remember like other people's first contract. And I'm like, "Oh, so how'd you get into sports staff?" They're like, "Oh, like I'm a personal trainer back home." And I applied here, and I was like, "Do you have any experience with rock climbing or surfing?" They're like, "No, nothing until I got on the ship." And I was just being like, how did you get this job over me? I had to work and transfer versus getting hired on. But it just shows that getting on those ships could be the biggest mix of all those backgrounds.
Well, that coupled with, I mean, this is a deeper conversation, but it's where your recruiters are too. Like, we know that. That's a
And
different thing.
we'll
But
also, again, same thing. We could go like after working with Jara, my wife, who was a recruiter for sports staff, the things she went through, I was like, if I applied now, I'd be hired in a heartbeat. But back then, they didn't need sports staff; they needed youth staff. And then 6 months later, they go, we don't need any youth staff; we need sports staff. Or 6 months later, we don't need any sports staff; we need cruise staff. Like all those, there's the rolling cycle of life of people sticking it out, people, getting hired, doing a contract or two and quitting, people doing it for years on end, then bailing. And one of the biggest changes was you did Harmony takeout. So a takeout is when you are the first crew on a new ship. And I did Symphony takeout, and the Symphony takeout, they said no new hires allowed, which means it can't be your first contract. They want experienced staff that know what they're doing to give the best of the best. When Wonder came out and Jarrah was staffing for it, they had like 15 new hires on the takeout. And I was like, that's nuts. This is post COVID, all kinds of things going on. But I was like, I can't believe they're bringing new hires. And Jared's like, yeah, we're just throwing them in, throwing them on the new ship, teaching them the way things need to be done on a brand new ship. Versus when we were on Symphony and they're like, it needs to be minimum 2-3 contracts deep to give that crazy experience.
Okay, so that's interesting. So I did 2 takeouts. I did the Anthem, and I met the Anthem in Germany. So I was in Germany
Dude,
for
I wanted to do it.
2 weeks.
So Anthem is quantum class. So every class is named after the first ship that comes out. So quantum class was the quantum.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make sense. The quantum class of ships, and then Anthem was the third,
second. So let me get into that because this is going to build on your story.
You go.
So, I went to the Anthem. It was like May of 2015, something like that. I don't know. You could look up the takeout. That I was there. I promise. But I was in Germany for like a week with it. So, back this up is in the middle of my first contract, because this was my first contract. I was like 6 weeks in. My boss goes, "Hey, in 2 weeks you're going to a new ship. You're getting transferred." And I'm like, "To where?" And he's like, "The Anthem in Germany." I'm like, "I'm sorry, what?"
So you didn't even apply.
And like, dude, 6 weeks in, I have no idea what's happening, right? I'm so green. I'm confused. You can guess my state of mind at this current moment. When somebody says, "Hey, we know you were supposed to be..."
You've just barely gotten used to ships. Now you're getting sent to a takeout.
Oh, and I'm getting sent there from the navigator, dude. There were 6 of us. Like, so they send me off over there. Long story short, we'll talk about the takeouts another day. We can do a whole thing on takeouts. But I was there because the English crowd only likes English speakers. So there was a bunch of first contract people, but they were all English. There were like 3 Americans, and then 1 or 2 from people that weren't from like the greater UK area, right? I think we had 1 Serbian, and then 1 or 2 people from Portugal. The rest were all England, and then iFly was all the first quantum iFly guys, which was super fun and cool. But yeah, so sometimes you get on your first contract. But when I did the Harmony, I did not meet that one. I met that one about a month after it got taken out, and I met that in Barcelona and took it over to the U.S. for the first time. The Anthem I actually didn't bring to the U.S. I stayed in Europe the whole time. That was a fun one.
Jared and I say we, not me and the frog in my pocket. Jared and I never did any Atlantic crossings. We've done the Pacific. So we've gone from Asia to Australia to Hawaii to Seattle. But we never got the Florida to UK to Europe thing. Even when we did Symphony in Europe, it went out of Palma de Mallorca in Spain, and it did a European run to France and Italy, and then we signed off the symphony before it made the crossing back to the U.S. So we've never done the Atlantic, never done the small parts of the Mediterranean, never got to hit like. So when you were in Germany, so the Anthem class ships, they will do, the smaller ships can do smaller ports, and I think it was I begged to do. I feel like it was
Brother, the
Odyssey.
Anthem wasn't that small.
No, but
It
I
was
mean like
just really
again,
thin.
from Oasis class, but
Yeah, those things were
yeah,
boats.
you're
Like,
subtracting.
those
Oasis
things are
is
so wide.
so Oasis class is 8,000 people, like crew and guests. Quantum class is 6,000, about 1,500, 1,800 crew, the rest guests. And I begged Jera to do, I think it was the Odyssey. What's the one before Odyssey? We got Anthem, we got Quantum, Spectrum. It was Spectrum. So I begged Jared to do the Spectrum takeout because it was in Germany, and then it would hit the Mediterranean, and it went like through the Mediterranean Red Sea, did like Eastern Asia, all the way across to Asia, then back to the U.S. And I was like, Jared, please let's get on it. But the timing didn't work out for weddings and life and everything like that. And being
Bro.
like, do you want to extend a 7-month contract to 9 or 12 months? And Jared's like, no. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. So we're going to bail and do that. So it's, yeah, the smaller ships could do cooler things. But the big ships, the bigger the ship, the bigger the crew life. The smaller ship, the smaller the crew life. Like that's.
But the other thing is the
whole
tighter
animal.
the knit the crew life. Because I remember on the thing about like the Navigator, and I never worked a small ship again. So the ships that I worked was Navigator, Anthem, Oasis, Allure, Harmony, and then back to the Oasis again. That's the order that I did.
Okay.
So the only time I spent
wow.
on a small ship was that first 6 weeks on the Navigator. But since it was such a
that's
small
nuts 'cause-
crew, dude, we were tight knit. Like we were
So tight knit, yeah.
And same thing, you knew all the cast members inside and out. You knew all of the officers. You freaking knew the deck boy. Like you knew blue boys on a dap up basis, right? Like,
Yeah.
which would never happen
So
on the big ships.
We did the Jewel, which is 3,000 people total. That was our first one. Then we did Oasis, Allure. Oh man, how did it go? Oasis, Allure, then Indie, Ovation, Symphony, Ovation, and then after Ovation, I became iFly. So then we did like Ovation, Anthem, one more like fill on Nav, back and like you said, when we did the Jewel, you'd go to the bar and there'd be the same 20 people, and it's the cast, and there's only 20 cast members on the Jewel, and you know them intimately, and then you get on Oasis class, and you're
Or
like,
you
okay,
don't
there's
because they're hermits and
80
live in
of
their
you.
cabin. Like there's no middle ground.
Yeah, like
they're either at the bar or
band
in their cabin.
Yeah, so like we knew half the band because 10 of them would come to the bar and the other 10 didn't. And then you get on Oasis class and you're like, okay, there's 30 people in the theater band and then 15 people in the ice cast, 40 people in the theater cast, 25 people in the aqua cast. Like, that's 100 people right there that are just the dancers and singers and stuff like that. And you go to the bar and they go, oh, well, the rest of the cast don't come till 10 p.m. And you're like, well, I got work tomorrow at 8 a.m. to do the flowrider. Like, I'm not staying at the bar.
Well, you're there at 7:30 to open it up. Oh man, I used to love my favorite shift on all those ships was deck setup, aqua aerobics. Oh, give it to me any day of the week.
No, get out of
Greatest
town.
greatest shift on the planet.
No.
Because here's the thing. You, if you know how to do deck setup right, we can both agree on this. And if you know how to do it right, it takes you 15 minutes tops, if that. So,
No, I can't agree with that. No, are we talking Oasis class?
yes.
So, no, I will disagree just because it takes you 15 minutes of stairs, elevators to get from shuffleboard to.
Oh, I'm saying once you're there. It's not 15 minutes to get up there. It's like 5 minutes. But once you're there, I'm saying
No,
from the locker
I'll give
room,
you
open up
8
the door, it
minutes.
takes you 15 minutes to set it up.
30 minutes for deck setup from unlocking shuffleboard stuff to unlocking putt-putt. And the only times it was really aggravating is when someone's there at 7:45 being like, we've been waiting for shuffleboard. And you're like, bro, it's 8 a.m. Calm down.
Okay. We'll
Like,
call
that-
it
that
20
is
minutes
where I
for the
will
sake of
disagree.
argument. We'll call it 20 minutes for the sake
Yeah,
of argument.
for the sake of it.
Okay.
All right, for the argument.
But either way,
I will
you're
agree with
always
you,
scheduled-
aqua
you're
aerobics was one of my favorite things.
So you're always scheduled an hour for deck setup because there were people that were slower. We moved with the tempo, yada. But it took you 20 minutes. You had that extra time to yourself. And if you were there in the morning, you would generally take your time to set up the deck because you had all that extra time. But what I would do is I would set up the deck quick, and then I would run downstairs, have breakfast, because you didn't have to start water aerobics until on the hour. So you had about 30 minutes to eat and then get back upstairs to water aerobics, bang out water aerobics, and then casually walk your way on over to the wave and flirt with every U staff on the way over.
Dude, that's crazy because
I loved it.
I would get up early, have breakfast, do deck setup, get to water aerobics, and that's when I turned on to be like, all right, we got 11 old ladies here, and you would just make up water aerobics on the fly. So anyone who ever, if you even want a good show, go to water aerobics because you will watch someone who has zero training in water aerobics. And I remember I even went in the pool one time to be like, all right, what is like some dumb exercises that are kind of difficult? And I would just make them up. And you just make these old women do these. All right, hold the buoy between your knees. Now keep it underwater. Now scoot with your arms across the pool. The last one to the other side of the pool has to do it again. And you just watch these old women like scoot across a pool, and you're like, this is why I'm paid the little bucks. All right, here we go. And you do that, and it's, what was it scheduled? 15, 30 minutes max.
I think like 30 minutes
And-
was it? I would always do it for 30.
Yeah, like it was 30 minutes, but it was sort of like the do it for 20 and then say, okay, that's your thing. But when it got fun, especially when you had the old women that were crazy into it, that's when you're like, you're going to push this to 40, 45 minutes. Like, why are you late to wave? Because water aerobics was super intense this morning. And the manager couldn't be like, well, you can't do that. He'd be like, I guess that's okay. Yeah.
And that only worked because so many people would bullshit water aerobics. There would be so many, and here's one thing is, we worked with a particular topographical group that did not care for any extra activities that was not work. And they wanted to get out of them so quick. They would pretend not to speak English.
On the
They
inverse,
would pretend.
I have a friend, one of my coworkers got a name comment. So at the end of the cruise, like, hey, do you want to say anything? Like, oh, Nagy was amazing on the flowrider. Fish was great on rockwall. Like, zipline was so much fun with these guys. He got name comments for his water aerobics. And we were like, you are the king. Like, bow down, buy you drinks. Because people were like, Louis on... His name's Louis Rainyard. And I hope you're listening, bud. Because he got name comments for his amazing abilities on water aerobics. And everyone's like, how? Because most of the time you show up and, like you said, half the people are trying to get out of it. Like, no one showed up after 5 minutes. I canceled it. I'm done.
No, they did. They would leave
then,
at 7:55. If it's supposed to start at 8, they would go to the bathroom at 7:55 and be like, nobody showed up. And then you would find out at like 3 in the afternoon. Your boss would kick out the manager's door and be like, "Hey, Bratislav, did you not go to Waterworks this morning?" And
Yeah.
we're all
there was a
starting
guy-
dying. That's how it
There
always
was
goes.
a guy that they showed us the video of him hiding at the towel station for 10 minutes and then walking away to say, and he goes, no one was there. And the manager pulls up the video and goes, they were there. Here's the video of you hiding. Here's a written warning because you bailed on the easiest of duties.
So,
and it's just like, man.
There were plenty of people that did avoid it, and the bar was not set high for Nagy and I to enjoy this. Now, here's another thing, is as Americans, we were complete minorities. I'd say of the total ship crew, we were less than 1% of 1%.
I mean, yeah, we were. But if you went to the cast all American.
American, English, and Australian. I'd say a good mix of those three.
Yeah, but I would say when it came to crew staff, youth
hold
staff,
on.
sports staff,
it depends on the
Americans,
cast.
we were.
Because Icecast had rarely Americans in it. It was all Canadians and Europeans.
I mean, Ice, Canada, yeah, you got it. So it's...
Okay, but either way, my
You're
point
not
being
wrong,
proven
but-
is that Nagy and I were minorities on that cruise ship, and
Americans
we oftentimes,
are like the amount of times that you're cruising and someone's like, you're American, you're like, yeah, and they're like, you're the first one I've seen, and you're like, well, we're around, but yeah, we're the only ones you're going to interact with.
and we oftentimes got very guest-facing side duties because of it.
Doors, gangway, sports. That's for sure.
To be fair, I would rather do doors, one of the duties that I got was I could do parade or 70s or teen boogie. I would rather do 70s any night of the week than teen
70s.
boogie.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
Again, like we talked about, 70s is the weekly dance that you go out and you dance in front of people. And especially once I started doing it as sports staff, you know, they recognize the tattoos, they recognize your face. Youth staff, you're the maintenance guy. I'm a damn, espionage agent. Like, they're not seeing you. But sports staff, they see you, or you're doing doors, and they get a flashier tattoo, and they're like, "Weren't you the construction worker?" And you're like, "Yeah, that was me, guy." Like,
or dude, even like 3 days later when they bring it up, because what they do is they record them and they play them on the TVs all the time. So you'll be like in the gym and somebody's like
pointing at the TV like, "Yo, man, is that you?" Like, "Yeah, I just have my shirt on in the gym, but I don't while I'm doing, the YMCA." Like, yeah. Can you? So there's certain songs I hear now, and they just like rattle my bones. If I hear the YMCA, I get like a rush of adrenaline. But if I hear freaking Love Train, or if I hear certain songs from
Boogie Wonderland,
it like rattles my bones. Oh, it's just like, yeah, I hear that.
Saturday Night Fever.
Oh, that motif. Yeah, I mean, no. So, Night Fever. I still got that John Travolta. Like, I still got it. But there's certain ones that like I hear and they just like Brick House. That one just like hurts my heart. Like, I can't do that one anymore.
Oh, all right. So I guess since we've brought it up enough, we'll go into our 70s rant of how things work on that night, and then we'll give you the debauchery and shenanigans. So to give you guys perspective, we talked about the two different roles earlier. And what we do, I'd say the whole show is what, about 45 minutes? Would you say start to finish?
It's about an hour.
Yeah. Now,
like an hour from when the cruise director walks out, says, "Let's get this 70 night thing going," to the end of the last song.
And
Oh,
across
David Bowie.
that,
Sorry to bring it back. David Bowie songs. Just, uh, I can't. Like, oh, it just hurts my heart. It makes me so angry. Like, living on a prayer, I hear it, and I'm like, I just picture myself holding a little plastic wooden tomahawk, and I'm like, I just want to put my fist through a wall right now. But I'll get to that in a sec. So you go back to your thing, yeah.
so what we would do is we would all dress up in the same costumes. The girls had one costume, guys had one costume. And then about three or four songs in, the village people would go duck away, and we would hide for about, I'd say, 2 or 3 songs. I don't remember the exact time, but it was long
It's
enough
about
to
30
like,
push-ups. That's what I know.
it was long enough to get back there, grab a few drinks, do some push-ups. We had some buddies that put a lot of baby oil on. So there was enough time to get stuff done. So we probably had about, I'd say,
Did
10
you ever
minutes.
baby oil?
I never, well, once or twice, but not consistently.
See, I just got to glisten from sweating. So I'd be like, I don't need it.
Oh.
Because, again, you come in from the, afro disco shirt, glow rings, and then you run inside, and I was always a construction worker for a long time. I was a construction worker with a native. And so I would rip off my clothes and throw on construction worker stuff, and then chug whatever drink you'd hidden in the stairwell, crank out a bunch of push-ups, chug more alcohol, do more push-ups, walk out. That's why I said it's about 30 push-ups of break, because it's 10, drink, 10, drink, 10, go out with a little bit of a pump.
And now, once we go out there, you're out there for like half an hour, nonstop. There's no coming back.
Yeah.
And so we get out there, and then we do 2 dances. We would do the YMCA, and then we would do the
in the Navy.
And then we would go out, and there was a bunch of kind of choreographed, kind of unchoreographed, do whatever you want type of songs throughout that whole thing.
That's where it would hit. You'd hit Love Train, and so you'd get all the guests to follow you around, and like, Fish, you lead. Just start throwing people behind you as you lead the train. Then I jump in a little later, somewhat like the police officers throwing them behind me, and then the native is throwing them behind them, and you lead the train. And that's Love Train. People over the word join hands. I'm trying to think of that. And then we kind of break down to...
It kind of was just a bunch of stuff, but one of the other things I want to include is it was always bonus points if you led the love train with a wheelchair. Always bonus points.
Oh, yeah. Getting wheelchairs involved, like, you'd go out of your way to grab one and wheel them out. Guy, girl, kid, adult, doesn't matter. You're grabbing them and bringing them to the middle of the show.
Yeah. Oh, man. So we would do that, and there was a bunch of debauchery and shenanigans, as everybody can guess, that would happen in that time frame. And then we would close out with like a little dance on top of the thing, and then we would all leave. There were multiple times that there were very good-looking sports staff just coming in with dollar bills parked in wherever, right? Like, because now here's the other thing.
Dance over here, and you're like, I didn't even know you people carried cash on board, and they're throwing money in your construction belt, and you're like, thank you, but I don't know how you have this, so I respect it.
And coupled with that is like, it was very, you didn't see, didn't happen. Like, I did see it, nothing happened, nobody would look the way, and we were Magic Mike monsters on grandmas.
Yeah.
Dudes wearing Dale Earnhardt shirts.
If you could get the guy,
you
like,
name it, I am going to bump it up against you, and I'm going to twerk so hard that it's going to be uncomfortable for you, and everyone else is going to enjoy it.
Oh, grandma is standing up, and I would pick up old women constantly, and they would want pictures on pictures on pictures, and then you try and pick up a guy.
Hold on, move a little closer to your mic.
Like, and then you pick up a guy, and he's like, nah. And then you go, okay. And I would jump into his arms And he's like, whatever. And someone snaps pictures. Like, the amount of pictures and videos we would be in from people's cruises that we will never ever see. You could, like, if AI scoured Facebook, you and I will pop up in thousands of pictures that we didn't even know about and being like, I don't remember that night because I was drinking pink wine and it was making me frisky. And, like, it's there.
So this is also a time where Nagy and I's friendship really flourished. Is when we did before 70s, because we only did it. No, we did it on both the ships we were together. Either way, it was very
Yeah.
common to drink and get loose because again, you're about to dance like an absolute animal in front of, I'd say, the better half of 2,000 people.
I would say, yeah, I was gonna say 1,000, 2,000. And this
Yeah.
is one of the few times that all the superiors turned a blind eye. Of, we're not looking. We know you guys are gonna drink before this. We don't. Like, I can remember chugging alcohol in front of a cruise director, and he never said a word. He just happened to start singing the other way because he's like, it's 70s, doesn't matter. If you did anything dumb, you're fired.
I
But
was about to say,
it's
I
one of those
remember the
times.
conversation specifically from my first manager was, "Hey, don't be an asshole." That's it. Like that's the
That's
only
it.
talking
That's it.
to you got. So-
Don't do anything. Like, go make memories. And like I've told you before, there's times where I would literally walk up to a grandma, take her grandson's or her son's drink, chug it, and pick up the grandma. And they love it. And you go, you just made a memory for them. That's why they'll cruise Royal. But you don't walk up, chug a guy's drink, and walk away, because then you're just an asshole. Like, you made a memory. Like, dude, I just had a, like, the village people just walked up. I bought them a round, and they chugged it and left. That's a memory. Not, yo, the construction worker just like pirouetted my wife and walked away. Like, no, you were always enhancing fun, not retracting it. And that's what made 70s so magical, is that we could do all these things to enhance people's lives and, spread joy of, like, hey, do you think you can beat me at chugging a beer in the middle of a choreographed dance? And you do it and then hit your tunes and you're like, and I'm out. And, like, that's what it was.
so before the show, Nagy and I would always meet up in the bar, and we would have one of two drinks depending on how the day went. It was either tequila Sprite or Red Bull tequila. And
Yeah.
we would have two of those before we went to whoever's cabin. So if 70 started in an hour, we would
And
down those in what, probably about 15 or 20 minutes.
max. Yeah.
and then we're
Like,
gone.
it's one of those things where, like, you get it, and the ice hasn't even chilled it because you're like, yo, we're on a time crunch.
And so it was not uncommon for crew members to be absolutely slaughtered doing this thing and having the time of their lives and keeping it respectful and having a great time with everybody. But yes, I can think of numerous times that. Go ahead.
Oh no, so I was gonna say, so the best drink combos we ever had was the activities manager Katie would go to Starbucks the night of 70s, and she would get the Starbucks raspberry teas, and those things are like $4 a pop. And she would get a slew of them, get a bottle of Grey Goose, and get like a case of Red Bull. And we would drink those, and she made you a drink, and I was like, cool. And I was drinking it, and then I got up and I was like, I grabbed the bottle of Goose, and I was trying to pour more in. She's like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh, I'm just trying to kick this up a bit. And she goes, one, you never serve yourself in my cabin, I am your host. I will pour for you. 2, you don't need it. And I was like, well, I can barely taste the vodka in here. Like, I just wanted to kick it up. And her and Nate, the youth staff manager, were like, trust me, bro, you don't need it. And I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to sit back down in shame. And they're like, by the time that 4th song hits, let us know if you think you would have needed more. And by the time the 3rd song hit, I was just like, I can't feel my legs. Woo! Like that. So that to me, if you can afford it, I don't know if we might have sponsors from Starbucks. Hopefully we'll get some of that later. But the raspberry tea, Grey Goose, and a Red Bull in that. And it is the most delicious concoction you can think of. And it sends you to another level. Sorry. So that was my interjection on like pre-gaming. I was like, no, that wasn't the pre-game. That was the whole game. Then you go out and go.
That's true. We did. And oh, by the way, to preface all this is like 9 o'clock at night. This isn't in the mid-afternoon in the morning. We are hammering Red Bull.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, generally, this is after you've worked all day, man. You have worked all day and you've got to go do this. Or it was causing all night.
You'd finish at like 6. You'd finish the day shifts. You'd go have dinner, and then you would start prepping for 70s. And then the next day, you usually had a C day. Like, because it would come from whatever. So it's like you're wired at 11 p.m. and you're like, cool, I have to go do water aerobics tomorrow at 7:30.
Well, no, here was the best part is the late night snack when they brought us all the food they didn't cook in the Windjammer for the day. So you get done with 70s, you go shower, and then you go down to the mess and you eat like hamburgers and hot dogs, just pass out, or pizza or whatever the hell they had at that late night thing.
So I never did the late nights. I can't eat carbs after 10.
Oh, dude.
Well, rarely. No, because I was like, dude, I just drank all my calories. Look at me, dude. I'm 5'9", 200 pounds. I never needed the extra stuff. You're 160?
Right now, 145.
Yeah. Oh, jeez, man. Yeah, so you're just this tiny human. You can eat 2 hamburgers at 10 p.m. and wake up the next day fine. I do that. I wake up the next morning and I'm like, I think I just gained 4 pounds. So,
dude, oh man,
that's why I hated water aerobics in the morning,
bro. And then if you had a Jamaican chef that was the crew chef, and they had extra beef, he would always put patties out at night. Oh, that is one thing we do need to talk about at some point is how the different chefs would affect the crew caf. Like there would be times I remember.
Oh, absolutely.
I remember there'd be times I'd walk in there and I'm like, I'm not eating for the next 2 weeks. I'm not like, and then there'd be other times where you're just hoarding food. You're just, oh man.
You get very clever with the types of food. Like when I was the smaller ships, that's the other thing bad about small ships is a lot of times the food is limited. On the big ships, you have 5 different options of American, curries, rices, salad bars, everything. You get on a small ship and you're like, you got 2 options. And that's it. Like when we were on
enjoy that fish head stew or rice. Enjoy that.
Yeah. Like when we were in India, I was like, dude, I had eggs Benedict every morning because they had poached eggs, ham, and bread. And that was the only thing I could have for breakfast besides like curries and fish and rice. Like those were the 2 options. I was like, I can't believe these are the 2 options, but I'm okay with it. Or you get on a ship and you're like, I guess I'm having a fruit parfait every morning for breakfast because it's that and like goat stew and rice for breakfast. You're like, okay, parfait or stew. Guess I'm going to be healthy for a while. And like Nagy, you look so good. Like, yeah, it's because we were on a tiny ship. Or you get on the big ships and you're like, yeah, they had hamburgers and unlimited bacon and eggs and like your own omelet bar. Like, why'd you gain weight? Like, because food was really good.
And that's one thing, to be fair, is we didn't have to. If you wanted to go to the specialty restaurants, you had to pay for food. But all of our crew mess, you could eat as much as you freaking wanted,
Yeah.
all the
As
time.
long
You
as they
just had
were
to know when
open,
they.
you go and eat. Yeah.
So, yeah, if there was a good chef, there were people that were putting on weight. That coupled with their drinking all the time, and that was
Well, I mean, the drink of sports staff was vodka sodas or liquor sodas.
yeah.
Any liquor sodas, especially vodka, because I remember working out with one guy. It was a CrossFit crazy. This is when I worked out. This is way after you. And he was like, "Yeah, let's go work out, and then we're going to the bar." And I was like, "We're defeating everything we just did." And he goes, "No, dude, it's vodka sodas. They don't count." And I was like, "This coming from the guy who's being my, quote unquote personal trainer."
I remember the Serbians would make jet fuel sometimes, and they would take it's a monster, pour C4 into it, and then it's half that, and then they would put
Oh,
vodka in the rest of it, give it a little, and they would sip on that all night while they're just in the crew bar, and that's how they would go till like 4 in the morning. Dude,
I mean, yeah. I remember guys taking bumps of C4 and slamming shots, and I was like, "Hey guys, I'm good. I'll just take the shot." Like, and yeah, that's how you drink till 3 in the morning, and then wake up at work at 7:45 the next day.
dude, we worked hard and we partied harder, man. And that
And
was
that was
really
the
kind of
beauty
like
of it. Like that.
there's a way to say like, oh man, party was the only way to getting it out, but it was kind of like we were again, everybody's so tense, nobody sees their family ever. You're on these ships literally seeing Groundhog Day for 7 months at a time, 9 months at a time, 5 months at
Yeah.
a time. So everybody's absolutely wired, coupled with every guest that walks onto that ship thinks you're an absolute idiot and moron until you prove them otherwise.
No, I think inversely, everyone thinks you're an extremely trained professional.
Oh, that's
And
fair.
it's like, yeah, like, oh, you're an expert at the flowrider. Like, sure, let's go. And oh, you're a trained zipline professional. You're a rock climbing expert. And like that. And it's almost like prove them wrong and you can talk to someone and go, "Oh my god, I was right wrong. This is some kid just working on a cruise ship," or "Yeah, that guy seems like a trained professional," and you have no idea that they're actually like, "I'm actually insanely hungover, but I'm just a very good people person." Like that's the hidden talent of it is, yeah, there's a lot of times like you said, you go to a bar to blow off steam because there's it's crazy because you go to the bar on ships because that's your thing. Like there's no you don't go home, you don't go to your cabin. There's a lot of people that do, but most of the time you finish work, you shower, you eat, you relax for a bit, then you go to the bar. Because you go to the bar because even if you're not drinking, if you're not doing anything, you're at the bar, you're socializing, you're meeting other people from other areas, things like that. But you might go to the bar till 3 a.m., even if you don't drink, and then you're getting up the next day and everybody's performing their tasks. Like, that guy was buying rounds all night, and he's now being an exceptional waiter around at the pool. And that guy was drinking drinks all night. Now he's at the Rockwall being an exceptional crew member, like creating those memories, doing all those things. But that's what you do. That's your lifestyle. Like you go out, you do all these crazy things, then you go to your job. And that was what was so cool about cruise ships is that's what you get used to. And like when you're good at it, when you accept it, you're performing at your highest capacity. When you're bad, it's like, yo, I don't really trust the surf guy right now because he looks hungover as shit. Like you're not doing your job anymore. You're not being the best person you could be. But when you can go to the bar and drink those pre-workout vodka drinks till 3 a.m. and then 3 hours later you're at the wave like, hey buddy, you ready to do some awesome stuff? Let's do it, man. Like that's where you're like, yo, this is peak performance. You are killing it. You're doing that job. But that's the lifestyle that you're into of killing it, doing it well, and making those memories.
So let's break that down a little bit more. So one thing is, you always kept saying get up for your job. We were up almost every day by 8. You were at work by 8 more often than not. When you're
8:30.
Yeah. I'd say 8:30 tops, and that's if you
Most activities start at like 9, but
Yeah.
you have to be
there
you got
for
to get
setup
up
and everything.
get breakfast, and then go. Yeah.
And we worked that on a C day from 8 a.m. to about, I'd say 5 or 6, depending on what your late night activities
5.
are.
Yeah.
So, if you're working like spots, like we talked about, that's another 2.5 hour show that you have to hold the spotlights for. So you'll get done a little bit early so that you can go have dinner and then go get ready for that show because you have to wear particular clothes for it too. So we would end up working on C days easily 10-hour days, if not 12.
Yeah.
Depending on what
I mean, because
was
even
going
if it's
on.
between shows, you might like, even if you're doing doors, you have to get dressed up. You go do doors for an hour, have a couple hour break, go do doors for another hour, then you're done.
Yep. And so with that, that's a C day. A port day for us that wasn't a turnaround day was you would either be the person that works in the morning and the afternoon, or you would be the person that works in the afternoon. And if you're not one of those people, you're stuck doing gangway, which is in the
Yeah.
middle of the freaking day. You get like 10
I mean,
to
I would consider
3.
that an afternoon shift. Yeah,
Yeah.
like I would consider that a morning. Like you're doing morning gangway of helping people get off the ship, or you're doing afternoon gangway and you're like welcoming people, being like, hey, if your CPAT, if your your ship card says this, that's the entrance. If your ship card says this, use the other entrance. Like go to the front of the ship, back of the ship, and all you're doing is just pointing. Like, hey man, ABC that way, DEF that way.
Yep. And we'll talk about our crowd control management skills a different day, which is well above average.
We've got certificates for it, man.
But with that, so those days, and then if you worked on top of that, you would generally work something in the evening. You would work a doors or a party or a diamond doors, or you'd work something. So we worked every day that we were on this ship. You never got a day off. Your day off would be that morning that we talked about, but you're working at 3 in the afternoon until midnight. So, it just kind of, you learn to keep the tempo going and become part of the flow of everything. Now, on a turnaround day, if you're working in the morning, you're up at what, 5 to be there at 5:45 or 30?
Turnaround day being that it's the ship's docked, you're getting all the people that just finished the cruise off the ship and welcoming people onto the ship. Turnaround being, turning guests.
Yeah, so you're either working the morning shift of that, which is about 5 a.m. till noon, 1 o'clock-ish. We generally try to get everybody off by 11, but then you have a few other chores and duties that you're doing before you get off the ship. You're restocking different things or whatever. Or you're the person that has the whole morning off and you're working that turnaround at 11 or 12 right on the nose, and then you're hanging, and then you're part of the ship working the whole rest of the night doing shows and doors and whatnot. And that was our day in and day out, coupled with the bar in the gym. that's every single day. And to your point with the bar was there's not many places to hang out. You have like a game room where we had ping pong, like 2 ping pong tables. You had a darts room, a
Video
pool table,
games, yeah.
which, oh, by the way, you could never play pool when it was mildly rocky out. You're like,
Yeah, you're like, hey, fish, let's go play pool, and then the boat rocks and it moves the little table. You're like, all right, well, that's the end of that. Like,
it made ping pong very enjoyable, though.
oh, so you get crazy good at ping pong because you're used to like moving table, moving board, everybody's shifting. Like, oh, the boat rocks this way. I'm gonna hit it that way. Like, you get really good at ping pong, but pool, foosball, nah, not happening.
Yeah. And so with that, your really only other place is the gym and the bar. That's like what you've got, or you're laying in your cabin watching TV. So, I mean, that's pretty much it.
But like, you go to the bar and like, there's times where I mean, infrequently that I wouldn't drink, but like Jera would go to the bar to just hang out with people because you're gonna go there even if you're not drinking or anything like that because it's better than sitting in your cabin reading or watching movies or watching TV. You're like, this is just where people are. But it also forces you to go out and be around people. So you don't have that, like, oh, I haven't talked to another person in weeks because you're not going to a 9 to 5 and then going home and being like, oh, I don't have the energy to go to a bar. Like, the bar's a 5 minute walk away and it's a 5 minute walk home. So you go to the bar because it's so easy. And even saying going to the bar, like the other thing was the cafe. There was times where we didn't step foot in the bar for months because all we were doing was going to the cafe and playing board games, hanging out, just not really drinking, but the cafe is the only place you could hang out with people that isn't the bar.
That's true. All right, I think we're hitting about time. Let's wrap this thing up. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Fish. This is...
I'm Nagy.
And you've been watching Crewzin Through the Void. Thank you.